Hello, everyone. It's Cate Stillman with the Thrive with Cate podcast, and I'm here with a dear old friend, Dr. Claudia Welch of drclaudiawelch.com. And we are going to have a informal conversation about whatever we want.
Sounds good.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm just curious, like what you're up to these days.
Well, we just had this moment of silence before getting on. Everybody, hello, everybody, welcome. And the word sacrifice came into my head. And so I don't know where this is going to go, but it occurs to me that I don't think we've talked since both of us have had some health crises. I don't think we've talked since then. And so maybe that's a good place to start with with this idea of sacrifice. And
Yeah,
I just
let's
want to
do
say
it.
one of the things I love about this word is it means to make sacred. And so I have that in the back of my head when I think about sacrifice. But I'm curious. No, I know your folks probably know what you've been through more than I have, but I'm curious about what's been going on for you with your health and what happened before with your health and how sacrifice plays into that and into your life right now.
Just a little question. I love it. Yeah, we talk a lot about this in Club Thrive, like this whole idea of like when we're setting goals, it's like what are we making sacred? And then, the way I look at it is almost like having an aim, having a target, like using Tejas or the power of discrimination to say like that, as much as I can vision and perceive, like that is what I want to make sacred. And then like just standing up and zooming into that, then like everything on the outside of that becomes the sacrifice. Like all these other things that we were doing or all these other the ways that things were working are now exterior to that. And so we use in Club Thrive, we use a lot of like this 80-20 rule of like what's the 80% that falls away as that target, as that becomes more clear. And then like that 20% is like the zoning in and so it means there's quite a bit of sacrifice.
So you're sacrificing 80%. And what is in that 80%?
Yeah.
Is that cookies? Is that Netflix? What is that? Is that perfectionism? Is it all of that?
It's like anything that just doesn't survive at the next level. To me is like the easiest way to understand it is like there's this idea of I mean, and I mean, all the Sanskrit words for that like upa sense of like something, there's something above, there's some, even like epigenetics, there's like an environment that exists at a level that is nurturing to a certain reality. So even like and we could take it biologically with like a really healthy microbiome means that you're not doing a lot of things that are absolutely mainstream in modern culture that are like right? So it's like when we wanna up-level our microbiome, we have to now get very selective in a way that in past cultures, we didn't have to be as selective. Like life on the farm, the cow took care of that for you. The cow dung, the soil, the gardening, like, you
Right.
know, eating heirloom seeds when you didn't even know they were heirloom seeds because we didn't have GMO seeds yet. Like,
Right.
but
Right.
just the degree of how, hey, cray-cray what's
Yeah, it
going
reminds
on
me
is
of, my dad used to misquote a sculptor who I've long since forgotten who the sculptor was and what the actual quote is, but the actual quote wasn't quite as good as the way my dad rephrased it. So what stays with me is my dad's misquoting of this sculptor. And basically somebody asked him, he sculpted horses among other things, and they were beautiful, and somebody said, how do you do that? And he said, it's easy, you just take away everything that isn't horse. And I love that. There is like constant sacrifice. There's constant sacrifice. And for me, in big ways and little ways, like every moment, like what am I attached to? Whatever that, if there's tension in my body or my mind, if there's tension in my mind, there's tension in my body. And if there's tension in my body, there's tension in my mind. And if there is that, I'm going to make this up, but I think that there's always a component of attachment that has to be released because something's tight. There's tension, it's tight. So something has to be released. Is that in the body? Is that in the mind? Maybe you do one and it affects the other. It doesn't really matter, maybe, but release that. What am I attached to in this situation? And that's the not hoarseness of the thing. Take away everything that isn't horse. That attachment isn't reality. That's just my tension around attachment.
Mhm.
And so that's really how many times a day am I letting go of something, sacrificing something, just that that word, so pratyahara, right? We all know is the turning inward of the senses. Prati is against, and ahara is often translated as food, but one of my favorite translations for it is the urge to fetch. So against the urge to fetch. There's this constant urge to fetch, whether it's a cup of tea or a cookie or Netflix or a something or a something or a something. And every time I can release that I can sacrifice that I can release that attachment, that gets down to more of what's horse
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that with, like, the speed of healing. Like, when
of
people
healing.
healing, right? So when you have a health crisis and it's like, I just wanna what I notice is that attachment is like, I want things to be like they were. I want things now to be like the past, and that can I mean, for me, there's a lot of, like, identity with that, especially around, uh, being an athlete, right? And I see that so much because I live at, like, surf breaks and ski hills, and now also on a lake where it's like, it's all about what we do. Like, what we do in our bodies is defined of like, this is who I am. I'm a surfer, I'm a skier, I'm a boater, I'm a biker, And so then as some healing crisis happens and then, oh wait, who am I if I can't do that? So then I just want to be that person who did those things at that capacity or at that. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. One of the things that's happened to me in the last year, which I'm not sure you know about, is that I had a health crisis last December, January, and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and almost died.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, I got MRSA pneumonia and pleural effusion, and they didn't know it was MRSA at first. It was really crazy because how I had the tiniest cold. I had no clue
You
that
in
that
Vermont or you were.
I was in New York. It was over Christmas, and I had just been helping someone go from the hospital to their house, and I probably got exposed to MRSA as well as a little cold. I got a little tiny cold. Then it was kind of done by Christmas, and the next night I couldn't sleep that night. I had so much pain, and I thought I must have pulled something in my upper mid back. Like, what did I do? I didn't remember anything. There was one thing that might have possibly explained it, but it hadn't been painful when that happened. And I thought, wow, I threw my back out. I've been in practice for a long time, and I know my body. It would hurt when I breathed, but it would hurt at this place in my back. And I didn't have a cold. I was over the tiniest cold of my life. And then it was, kind of go up into my shoulder a little bit. And I'm with my husband, who's also a doctor of Oriental medicine. I was with my brother-in-law, who's a chiropractor. I was like, Chuck, can you try to put this back? Whatever's going on. And it was so bad. I called my primary care practitioner. We were headed back to Vermont, and I said, hey, this is what's going on. She said, well, yeah, she didn't think it was pneumonia. It didn't occur to either of us that it might be pneumonia because it was just pain and I didn't have a cold. So she's prescribed a muscle relaxant. She said it might take a few days. I started taking it and did nothing. It did nothing. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. And a couple days later, I couldn't take it anymore. I went into the emergency room and they took an x-ray and I had pneumonia, but they didn't know I had MRSA pneumonia. They had to culture and send it out. So they were treating me and I was getting worse and I almost died. And I was not in this reality so much most of the time for a few days.
So you died the what in that case? Of the
What?
what, like, biologically, you would be dying of what? Like, what was going on cellularly
There was a massive infection of MRSA in the lungs, and
in the lungs?
it was in the pleural lining. So I had tremendous, which is extraordinarily painful. So there was pleural effusion, this buildup within, and the lung was filling up. So you'd end up dying of
Suffocation.
pneumonia, I guess, but suffocation. But um,
And were you getting short of breath at that point, or
Yeah, but, before I went into the hospital, I thought it was hurting to breathe because maybe a rib was out with
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
back thing. So I thought, "Oh, well, that's why it's hurting to breathe." But it was hurting to breathe because there was this buildup within the
And so
lungs.
finally, what, the culture comes back and it's
So
confirmed
the
what you
culture
have?
comes back, and then they knew which antibiotic to hit it with. And but, chest tubes, it was singularly unpleasant physical experience. But I bring it up for a couple of reasons. One, like sacrifice. And, when you're talking about when you're in a healing crisis and what are you sacrificing? One of the things for me that was really interesting, I'm now 57 and I'm dealing with life very differently than I used to in just magnificent ways
Mhm, mhm.
and very different ways of approaching things. And one of the things about this experience for me was if I used to have something going on, I would research it to the hilt and I would research the herbs and what should I be taking and exactly what's happening and this whole thing. I had a tremendous clarity as I was moving through that experience to to surrender completely, sacrifice completely. Just don't don't put my brain on the particular herbs, just trust the big divine, the big guru, the big whatever you want to call it, but trust that. And so, whatever they thought was the best course of treatment, I went with. And when I got out, I have a friend who's an acupuncturist and herbalist, and she said, What do you want me to send you? I'll send you anything." And I said, "Tell you what, I'll tell you what's going on with me, and you send me whatever you want to send
Yeah,
me, and I'll take
yeah.
it." And I didn't research the formulas that she sent me. I didn't like go down an intellectual place with this. I just did pranayama. When I got out, when I got out, I was really weak. I had to go home with a walker. So talk about, not being able to surf or whatever. I couldn't walk up the stairs, without it taking a long time and breaks and this and that. So I had a long way to come back from, and I had a lot of time sitting in a chair and doing gentle breathing and breathing in, breathing out. There was this wonderful Lala quote at that time that just sustained me so much. Something, what had to go? Day and night, do the rosary of the breath and something. It was just, but day and night, I did the rosary of the breath and surrendered and took these herbs. And I think they probably helped, but sitting there and surrendering and taking one, deep, middle, upper, slow breath, deep, middle, upper, slow breath over and over and over, and then getting into more pranayama. It was incredible, but yeah, there was a sacrifice of a part of who I was for sure. And as uncomfortable as it was such a gift. There was a story that when I was starting to get better in the hospital, there's a guru that some friends of mine follow in India, and he happened to be giving this satsang, which was in the middle of the night, my time. But there was no sleeping in in the hospital in my condition. So I tuned into this satsang, and it was a 2-hour satsang. And I don't remember anything else about the satsang except this story, which I remember very clearly. It's kind of an intense story, but can I share it?
Yeah.
So he says there's a disciple and a guru walking along. And I tell another story that starts just like that, but this isn't that story. There's a disciple and a guru walking along. They're going on a trip, and it's night falls, and they're taking turns keeping watch because they're in a dangerous place. Jungle and dacoits could come and so forth. And so the guru is awake at midnight and the disciple is sleeping. The guru is looking out, and this snake starts coming towards the disciple. And the guru, who has the capability of communicating with living things, aside from humans as well, says to the snake, "Oh, Snakey, what are your intentions with this man?" And Snakey says, "Well, in a previous life, I was a guy and he was a snake, and he took some of my blood and it killed me. And so now that's about to happen." And the guru thinks, law of karma. I can't screw with that, but what could be done here? And he says to Snakey, he says, Snakey, how about this? How about I take some of the blood from this man and give it to you? Then you can be satisfied, but he'll still live. Snake says, all right, that sounds fair enough. So, and this next part of the story doesn't seem exactly plausible, but let's just put that aside. The guru sits on the chest of the disciple and takes his hands and his feet and binds them so that he can't
Move.
struggle, because he's going to cut his neck a little bit and just take a little blood. And he doesn't want him to be afraid, so he's going to let him sleep. But, he's going to do it. So he's about to cut the throat of his disciple, take a little blood. And the disciple opens his eyes, sees what's happening, and closes them immediately. And the guru takes the knife, takes a little cut, gets a little blood, gives it to the snake, and snake goes away. The next morning, the disciple and the guru keep walking along, and in the afternoon, all day has passed, and the disciple hasn't said anything. And the guru says, so I know you know what happened because I saw you open your eyes, because I have eyes too. And so why haven't you mentioned anything about it? What gives? And the disciple said, I thought, well, if you're killing me, it's for my best good overall. And if you're not, it's for my best good overall. And whatever you were doing was for my best good. And so I just trusted that. So I heard that in the hospital, and I just was like, that's what's going on. That's what's going on. Something is being taken of me. And the more that I can just let that happen, the better for me it will be. And that was sustaining. And that was the flavor.
Yeah. Yeah. A few things came out while you're talking. Like one is Rumi's like sell your knowledge and purchase bewilderment. Like just that stage of like setting aside the Monovaj rota for a hot minute, like just being like, yeah, okay. And then there's other ways. And then the other is that the sacrifice when you're talking about like day and night and the rosary of the breath, it's like that just brought me right into, like, to me, one of the biggest sacrifices that all of our mothers, our ancestral mothers made, was to sit like that and nurse. And just nurse. Because that, like, when you were talking about like that, I'm like, oh, that reminds me so much of nursing, where you're just sitting, you're bioavailable sitting.
Yeah.
And it's breath by breath. It's like, and it takes so long. And then we bring in all this equipment. We bring in all these like pumps and bottles, and the whole digestive tract does not get developed. So the child has like microbiome and health issues like for the rest of their life, because we won't take the sacrifice of sitting and being quiet in modern culture, just like sitting and being bioavailably present with each other.
Right.
And
Here's that quote.
yeah.
Day and night, count the rosary of your breath and stay put wherever you are.
Yeah. Stay put.
Yeah. With nursing and bleeding, which was another part of my menopausal situation, that I could talk about. But I had heavy bleeding, and it took me a long time for that to buckle down and get the herbs that I knew that I needed. And when I finally did, that's what took care of it. But that bleeding, that's a sacrifice too, and one that every woman makes, sacrificing that blood.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of how your identity, right? It's like, how does the identity shift after near-death experiences, and also being okay with, 'cause that's what I found in mine, is like there's this, it's so cool to get to that surrender where you're like, let's see what happens next.
Yeah.
Without attachment, like I know all of my people will be just fine without me. Like as the world turns, like
Right.
this ability to say like it's not, yeah, because to me that is like, that's the ultimate, right? That's like that abhinavesha, that like releasing the fear of death. And then it gets so curious what happens next, because it just seems like
Yeah.
bonus time.
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, I've thought about death a lot this year, because it was interesting, because I had been asked to co-teach a course on death, not this past October, but the October before, with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Shubham Kulkarni and Dr. Robert Svoboda. So we did that, and part of our intention was to turn that into a book about death. And I was to start writing it in January 2025, and instead almost died. And so it was very interesting. I wasn't sure because of the intensity of the experience. I was like, whoa, what am I taking on here? Like
Yeah.
this happened that I was supposed to start working on this book. And I wasn't sure, maybe I'd bit off more than I could chew, but I got clear about it within a month or two and did write the book. We've just finished the book. Hopefully it'll come out a little more than a year from now. But it's given me the opportunity to think about death, reflect on it every day. And of course, almost dying gave me that opportunity as well. And it's interesting you said your people will be just fine without you. I had a couple of experiences when I was closer to death, and then one of them is really a lot about that. I don't remember. I went someplace and I don't remember how I was kind of given this, but I came out announcing it. I opened my eyes and in this life, in this 5-element reality, I kind of came to consciousness of this 5-element reality, opened my eyes, and my husband was looking down at me and he was really concerned, and I could see. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to die or not, but if I do, I want you to know that I'm ready to leave everything and everyone. And then I kind of went away again. And for a while, looking back on that, I thought I was responding to his sadness. And I realized that's not what was happening. I was announcing. I opened my eyes to announce to him something I was given, because there was this mantra almost that I was given, for lack of a better way to put that, that just kept saying itself to me. Be ready to leave everyone and everything at any time. Be ready to leave everyone and everything at any time. And I can't say that I am at every moment, but I think I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, and it exists in the paradox, right? Because it's like in the paradox is that we can be so incredibly useful to each other, especially as we get older. So when I was first diagnosed with cancer, two of Indigo's friends in the same grade, their moms were diagnosed with cancer. Actually, one had already been diagnosed, I think, a year ago, but the other was maybe a couple months after me. And they both died, and I'm here. And so these two girls, I see them a lot. And Indy and I talk about it a lot about like it's all just, bonus time because you don't know. And it, yeah. And it's not always also, I just want to hit on this, and this is going to come across like, I don't know. I think people who know me know that like I just live in the taboo for the most part. So there should not be surprising. But, like, in some ways, seeing these two girls who were, like, being really growing up in a cancer environment for years in high school was not helping them grow. And when their mothers, like, pieced out, like, they started to blossom in these ways of the village, of and it's not for everybody and blah, 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 all the disclaimer, 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 disclaimer. And to see, like, the village effect.
Mm.
And this just and no one can replace their mother ever, 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 ever. But, like, being in a living situation with people that are dying over years and being highly medicated on chemotherapy is no way to do high school. And my best friend in college, that was her high school experience. Her mom it was like a 5-year drawn out journey. Then she took a year off in college to go back and nurse her mom to death. And then the aftermath of the grief. And like that was like 6 years for her. And I don't know. There's just so much of, to me, that sort of faith of like, when it's done, it's done. And something will happen next.
Yeah. What was that quote that you said of Rumi's? Sell your
Yeah, sell
cognitive,
your knowledge. Knowledge. It's that cognate it's like that it's like it's not quite wisdom, but it's got something in that, like that.
sell your knowledge and purchase bewilderment.
Yeah, bewilderment, which is like be wilder. It's like
And
what's
I
beyond the
really love
fold.
that. I really love that. And I really honestly can't say what's right for anybody else to do. Absolutely cannot say that. You can treat 100 people for headache and it works, and the 101st person, it's not the right medicine for them. And I look at all the different trials that go on, the ones that I've been through, the ones that my husband has been through, the ones that my family has been through, the ones that my community has been through, the ones that the country is going through, the ones that other countries. all of these trials, what can be said? I know what can be said. Hang on a second. I'll tell you. Where is it? It's Lala's beautiful day and night. Count the rosary of your breath and stay put wherever you are. And this staying put thing is so powerful, right? Because we have such a colonial minded, Western minded, go get 'em drive all the time that is completely ill equipped to handle day and night through the rosary of the breath and stay put wherever you are. We don't know what to do with that. And I think that relates to sell your knowledge and purchase bewilderment. Sit here and be where I am and see what is going on in the world. Do my best in my part to interact with myself, with my husband, with my family, with my community, with the country, with the world. But don't go chasing it. Don't go chasing it. And I don't know what is right for anybody else. It's just this moment. Be here and be willing to meet it and stay with the attention.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that I remember from our healthier hormones experience, which I'm guessing is like 13 years ago, 14 years ago. It was a while back,
More than
15 years
that.
ago.
Yeah.
It was a while back.
Yeah.
Is this like and it like lined up with Diane Stein's Women's I Ching of like these times of waiting. Like if you're not clear, like you don't need to act. Like you can wait in times of unclarity for clarity. And I had a lot of books a couple of years ago. It was like on Inflamed and then I took Primal Habits out of Uninflamed, and then I had How to Scale Your Wellness Business, and then which is Cancer Journal, and it was like that urgency of it was like it felt like dharmic urgency in a way. It was just coming through. It was just like this is just what's happening. So this is just what's happening. Like, and I'm like I'm not going to do other things I was doing because this is just what's happening right now. And I was staying put, and I was doing it. And then it was really fascinating, like, after that phase, after, like, that identity, like, that chapter ended, and I was also in that time, like, changing being branded, like, so exclusively to yoga healer and yoga health coaching because 'cause I'm like, I'm very cross-cultural primal at this point, it's I love the Vedic tradition, and it was like a portal into, like, what is really the same across all these different cultures over time, like, just very like primitive biology awakening consciousness, like shamanic, to some extent. And I was like, okay, I've just been along for the ride the whole time, is what it kind of feels like. And I'm like, this is where it's going. So this is where it's going. I'm not going to over identify with some label, some moniker, some website, some domain, some like intellectual property. And then what was fascinating in that like rebrand to Wellness Pro Academy and Club Thrive is I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's like nothing, there's no like massive amount of information trying to organize itself through me. Like, that's a nice break, but also like, wonder, just sitting, but kind of curious too of like, I wonder if I'll always just be sitting or eventually I'll be like typing again or,
Yeah.
like cohesing some systems.
How old were you
Then
when that happened?
that was like 49 to 50 to 52. Yeah.
And then yeah, sorry I interrupted.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah, it was definitely like a halftime. It was definitely like we're in halftime, like we're gonna bring new people on stage and they're gonna do a song and dance. Like it and then there's gonna be a second half. Like that was clear. That part was clear. But then, when you're at halftime, you're like, is halftime at, it's like Super Bowl. It's like, is it ever gonna be over? Are they gonna like start playing again? And so then what happened was so fascinating. It's really recent. It's like, this is hot off the press. It's not on the press. It's, I noticed in the last 8 months, it started about 8 months ago, this obsession. I'll just call it that because it's kind of what it's felt like a cognitive, like just this subconscious level obsession with mythology. And I've been a student of mythology, so that part wasn't new, but it was like I couldn't get enough. It was like oxygen. It was just like more stories. Like, what I need to understand what happened. Like, how did we tell these stories? They're so detailed. Like, how did we remember? Like, how did, and then what's like the interpretation over time versus like what's the actual, like, how do we know those like original imprints of those earliest stories that were oral traditions? And I was really kind of being pulled more into the Greek myths. So, which kind of makes sense being a Westerner, that I think those are a little bit more accessible. And I know the way that consciousness works with me is it likes me to put things into like little simple systems for people to understand and make practical. So I'm like, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time. I was just like, my gosh, this story, this story. So then over the solstice, over the winter solstice in Club Thrive, we do like fast mimicking diets. Some people do 72-hour water fast. Some people just do like a like clean microbiome diet. And I was getting sucked into like nix and chaos. So like chaos is like the energy before the Big Bang, right? Feminine, divine energy. Nyx is one of her offsprings. It's night. Her other offspring is Erebus. That's depth. So you've got depth, y-axis. You've got Nyx, x-axis. And then they're children without a father, just from mother, chaos. And it's not disorganized. Like there's a lot of, logic interpretation of what chaos is as this disorganized. It's like the opposite of that. It's just like pure potential energy, the cosmic womb. And so my whole group goes into like night over the winter solstice and like fasting. And it's like the depth that comes in from just, and Nyx isn't a goddess embodied. She's like an element. She's like a power element in a way. And so then I'm teaching this last couple days in like it's like a 2-day, like 3-year vision, like get your, like just start to see what's going on. Like, who are you becoming? Like what's done, what's becoming. And I bring in the myths of Demeter and Medusa. And everyone's just like pulled out of that intellectual, that knowing, that what Rumi's talking about, and into this more subconscious wild part of their mind. And they're having these big breakthroughs about like where they're going and what's on target and then like the next book just like drops in of, it's going to be finding Persephone, and it's going to start with Demeter and then go into chaos and bring in a few other characters along the way, some which are mortal like Medusa, some of which are goddesses and some of which are just concepts, and kind of retell this whole feminine ancestral lineage.
Wow.
Where
That's
does this shit
great.
come from?
That's great. You must be familiar with the Emerald podcast with Josh Frey.
Yeah. Just recently though.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I love his work. I love all of that. It's really an amazing time to be opening to that, I think, in this second act, third stage of life, going into Vanaprastha, going into forest dweller. What does that mean? It's partially about this great woodpecker that just landed. It's partially about stopping the period, but it's about so much more. Like just the openness to bewilderment is just so beautiful, and that morphing, you know, mush in the in the chrysalis before they become butterfly, like, it's that mush place where it's just fine to not be anything, and not to look forward to becoming anything, just being, and the levels of transformation that happen around this time of life, opening to myth, opening to story, opening to a reality that I absolutely 100% do not understand 100%, like, so always, the Ayurvedic classics tell us always take the middle path. So this middle path, yes, so there's this perspective, that perspective, what's in the middle, like, um that the relinquishing all of this seems to have a big part to play in this stage of life. Some of these things to me have been like literally instantaneous changes. This from grahasta to vanaprastha, and some have taken 7 years, some have taken 8 years, some have taken a few years. There's a lot of change, but I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about too, about you know, you you're doing a lot of different things. You can't be put in a box. I've had people say, You can make $1 million. Let me tell you how to work with your hormones and work with the book and get you on Oprah. And it's like, that's not going to motivate me because I don't want to have to talk about hormones for the rest of my life. There's a lot of interesting things going on, and I'd rather be interested.
Yeah. I'd rather be interested. I'd rather not just pigeonhole my career into subject matter expert.
Mm-mm. And meanwhile, I'm so not an expert. Like the more you know, the more you know. There's a lot out there that you don't know. So again, I don't know what's right for other people. I kind of get a sense for sure of what my story is and how I want to approach some of those things. But I like learning through story. It's interesting. You're getting into the Greek mythology. 2.5 years ago or something, I started Menopause Chronicles, which is learning through story. It's this live twice a month online thing with women all over the world. And the first session, we have a guest instructor and we talk about things that really need to be talked about on all the different levels. But it's really fun because they're all the different levels. There's some physical nuts and bolts, there's some mental, emotional, there's some spiritual. But the second session of every month, we just tell our stories. And we're not allowed to give advice or ask for advice,
Mm,
just tell our
mhm.
stories. And our stories are as epic as Persephone's, you know?
Yeah.
And they are Persephone's story. And they're, in the all these different, yeah, we all embody all those stories. So learning through stories and not biological detail is way more interesting to me now.
Yeah, yeah. Especially when it's like, I mean, what I kept saying on Thursday and Friday last week, it's like you're every character in the story. Just like notice where your consciousness is going. And
Yeah.
there is this, it's interesting. I use a lot of liberating structures in group work, which is all I do really is group work. And there's a lot of these structures that are around like heard, seen, respected, right? Where you're not giving advice, or fishbowl, where you just hear a bunch of people talk about their stories on a topic and everyone else is sitting outside of the fishbowl. And then there's this really beautiful structure that is my club's favorite at Club Thrive, which is Troika, which is like it takes 30 minutes, three people. Each person gets the hot seat for 10 minutes. Now, if anyone's ever been in just like a blah, 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 like 10 minutes isn't a lot of time. The amount of clarity you will get in your little 10-minute hot seat is unbelievable because it's like intentionally consulting. So you get 2 minutes to explain whatever topic you want feedback on. You get 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes of clarifying. Yeah, 3 minutes of clarifying questions where your coaches or consultants can ask you questions to have a better understanding of the issue that you're looking for insight in. Then you either, if you're in person, if you're in the hot seat, you turn your back. And so they are literally talking behind your back. If you're on Zoom, you just turn your camera off so they can talk without your input of your facial expression or you're mute, right? You're just listening. So you get like people talking about your core issue for 4 minutes. And then the last minute you turn your camera back on or you turn to face your group and you share what was most valuable about their advice, suggestions, or ideas. And so so intentional, not mixing up like when are we just heard, seen, respected? When are we consulting? And I find that these separations of activities enable collaborative intelligence to just surge and a group. And then that grows intimacy, connection, the sense of togetherness, the opposite of othering, like however we want to say it. And everyone just gets high on that. The amount, which to me means like, wow, there's a lot of prana and it's held within a container. So there's a lot of ojas and that's activating tejas or insight. And it's doing so in what we all need so much right now because of all this sort of like isolation tendencies with technology.
That sounds like a fantastic way to move through a lot of material. I was thinking about just I know we're probably getting close to time, but can I bring in this one other thing that I think relates to this bewilderment versus knowledge thing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that has been really speaking to me in the last couple years. Well, it's been a really big part of my whole professional life and how I approach both the grihasta stage of life and the Vanaprastha stage of life, and it's all kind of come together in an interesting way. I don't know if you know that I was part of a organization called Satsangam. Well, I still am part
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
and it serves to orient students of Indian knowledge systems to the context in which their subject exists.
Mm.
Westerners, we can't help it. Oh, I'm going to study Ayurveda, and we focus in on Ayurveda. I'm going to study yoga. I focus in on yoga. But this is such a Western way of learning. So it's such a Western way of learning. There's a wonderful Masuda and Masuda, I think his name is, and Nesbitt had this fantastic study about how Westerners learn versus how Easterners learn. And in a nutshell, Westerners focus in on something and Easterners look at the context. And this is very interesting to me because of Ian McGilchrist's work. Have you heard of him?
I just read your post on it. I read this whole post, so yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah.
yes,
Okay,
and
so
I
you
am
know what I'm
familiar
talking
with
about.
Ian. I've heard some of his lectures. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he is amazing. And so, in a nutshell, right brain looks at the context of something, like, and left brain focuses in on something. So a bird focuses in on a worm, that's left brain. I know a lot about that worm and what's going on. Right brain, I don't want to become food. Where's the hawk? What's my environment? And the Western world has this focus in left brain thing, and the Eastern approach to things is more contextual. And what Ian McGilchrist finds is that when you are in left brain focus in kind of world, you get very certain about what you know because you know a lot about a little. And that certainty ends up being divisive, which is, of course, what we're seeing in the whole world right now. I know my whole thing about, I know this, and this person over here knows this, that about that, and we get divided. Whereas the right brain contextual bewilderment kind of I'm in awe kind of approach to learning and receiving information and perceiving environment is contextual. That right brain is contextual. And what that does is give us a sense of awe, of uncertainty. These ways of conversation and learning that are about knowledge versus about bewilderment or let's say awe, getting into that place of uncertainty really feeds us in a right brain. It supports right brain development, which I think we could use a bit of.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Yeah, I recommend everyone go to that's on your Dr. Claudia Welch site, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's your newest blog post. Yeah, it's excellent. And when you do it, I was like, fuck, yeah, I recognize the fish in the bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the background's kind of fuzzy. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. I just this morning, this is Indy's birthday next week, and I got on some AI tools. I'm like, what books does she need next? And it was cool to sort of create that more of that environment, like that thought environment with like phasing out instead of that, like,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
and this has been a huge part of the hormone work that I've done because if you focus in on the hormones, you don't understand why they
yeah.
act. You have to focus out on the context of life. Hormones respond to the context they're in. They're not like willy-nilly deciding, well, I'm just gonna screw around and do this. Like no, it's in response to what we do, what we think, where we are, how
Yeah.
we relate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw that with chemo. Like I saw my aunt like really die of chemo. Like cuz when she had like the cancer was and we have the same genetic thing. And it was so I mean so sad and also so like I will not let that lesson go, unlearned and then just seeing my friends and yet they're counting it as well the tumor shrunk. We shrunk the tumor, right? So it's like we know we can do but it's like but you killed the person. I mean no easy choices here, right? But like that whole thing of when we really just zone in. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
just wanna invite everyone who's been listening to just pause and, that what is sometimes it's easier to identify, like, what's the sacrifice where we know these things are not working for us or these identities or the whatever attachment to when we'll be done healing or whatever. And then, like, what's appearing as sacred.
And I think for a lot of us in the West, detaching from that focus in left brain way of learning. I'm certain about knowledge. If I learn just as much as I can about this thing, about my condition, about whatever, and all the different approaches to it, and which one is good, that's a very focus in. And to sacrifice that, especially for pitta types, especially for type A types, especially for Virgos, especially for whatever constellation of qualities we have that make us do that. Sacrificing that is like sacrificing our head. It's sacrificing part of us. It's a practice death, so but there's something else that's alive even when something dies like that. So what is that something that's alive is, I think, worth finding out.
Yeah. Have you seen Dave Gray's The Image? Have you read his Liminal Thinking book?
No.
Do you have a minute for me to show you this image? Give me a second. It's exactly what we're talking about.
Is your health good now, Kate?
I mean, well, like I said in the beginning, so because I feel like I do live in bewilderment, and I'm also very high in openness and like Western psychology, I'm sort of off, I'm on the chart of percentile and like the very upper percentiles of openness. So I already don't have I mean, obviously, if I can write about HGR, like I don't have any filters, right?
Mhm.
And so when this friend was like, "Oh, the Amanita diet," I was like, "Okay, sure," and I just can't get over even in the last 6 weeks how much vitality. Like I'm building muscle again, but I still when I had the radical hysterectomy and I didn't have estrogen, so I had the overnight menopause, my ovaries were also taken, my cervix. And because of the Lynch syndrome, at the time there weren't really studies on hormones and Lynch, and so it was thought to aggravate the tumor. Then a study came out in 2023 that was actually like, actually, you can do HRT, but I had rapid onset of my mom's genetic patterns around osteoarthritis. And then that just threw out, like, it was just so many assaults on Vata, just like really, really rapid aging. But at the same time, I have so much OJS from all you know,
Yeah.
from my parents, from good choices, being an athlete all my life, all that from the practices. So now what's fun is I'm like still undoing, like I'm seeing how much more muscle I can build and correcting like muscular patterns around the osteoarthritis, and it's an exploration.
That's really great. And I also have to say, because, one of the things I'm starting to plug away at is second edition of Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life, including like a few things that aren't in there. They just weren't on our radar as much back when I wrote the book. One of the things is pelvic floor health. Every woman should be really up on what that means. And there's a woman, Kim Vopni of the Vagina Coach or the Buff Muff method. She's fantastic. She's fantastic in preparing for hysterectomies, recovering from hysterectomies. Like, in Europe, women who give birth, they are given, and I don't know where in Europe, but a number of countries in Europe, you are given mandatory pelvic floor PT health visits for quite some time after giving birth. So if you've given birth, if you've had any of that, if you've never given birth, how many older women smell like urine? It's a lot of older
Right.
like there's a lot of understanding around pelvic floor health and strength and wellness that I think we need to mount the learning curve of. So for your community, if you're not aware of those things, it's not rocket science, but it does take some time. But Kim Vopni is fantastic in her wealth of knowledge around on this topic, and I want to make sure your community is aware of that.
Thank you.
The Buff Muff method. She's the vagina coach.
I love it. Yeah, I'll be looking her up. Okay, I just want you to see, let's see, this one. So it's just what you were saying, like the obvious, right? Rests on beliefs, judgments, theories, where we're pointing our attention and experience, which is really a very tiny, small part of reality,
Mm,
right? It's like this just like, so imagine reality is the infinite going in infinite directions, and experience is this little tiny box, like your experiences, right? And then all of that because, right? Like
right,
that's
right.
where beliefs lie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love this book.
Nice. Thank you.
Well, such a pleasure. Everyone can check out all the things that Dr. Claudia Welch is doing at drclaudiawelch.com.